I booked this room weeks ago, and now you're telling me it's gone? That's unacceptable.
Sir, I understand your frustration, but the system shows the reservation was canceled last night.
I didn't cancel anything. Don't you dare blame this on me.
I'm not blaming you. I'm explaining.
This is unacceptable. I booked a suite, not some closet, and you know it.
Sir, I'm asking you to lower your voice. I can try to find another room if you'll give me a moment.
Don't tell me to calm down. I want a manager right now.
It's okay, baby.
Imagine standing in the lobby of a 5-star resort. Your children beside you, excitement in their eyes for the family vacation you've been planning for months. Now imagine being told you don't belong there, that your reservation must be a mistake, that security needs to verify who you are while white families walk past unchecked. Marcus Williams didn't just experience this nightmare, he lived it. What happened next would expose the ugly truth about discrimination in America's most exclusive spaces. But here's what nobody expected. Marcus wasn't just any guest. He was a CEO with the power to do something no one saw coming. And what he did would change everything. Marcus Williams had built his life on 2 principles: hard work and family. At 42, he was the CEO of Williams Tech Solutions, a software company he'd grown from a startup in his garage to a multi-million-dollar enterprise with offices in 3 states. But success hadn't changed what mattered most to him: quality time with his wife, Diana, and their 2 children, 12-year-old Jasmine and 8-year-old Tyler. The past year had been brutal. 80-hour work weeks, endless business travel, missed soccer games and dance recitals. Marcus had seen the disappointment in his children's eyes one too many times. So when Diana suggested a week at the Grandview Resort, a luxurious beachfront property they'd seen featured in travel magazines, Marcus didn't hesitate. He booked the presidential suite, the works. This would be the vacation his family deserved. The 4-hour drive to the coast was filled with laughter. Tyler pressed his face against the window, counting palm trees. Jasmine scrolled through the resort's website on her phone, reading aloud about the spa, the infinity pool, the private beach access. Diana reached over and squeezed Marcus's hand, her smile saying everything. "Thank you for this. We needed this." As they pulled up the palm-lined driveway, the Grandview Resort rose before them like something from a movie. Gleaming white architecture, cascading fountains, valets in crisp uniforms attending to luxury vehicles. Marcus felt a swell of pride. He'd earned this. His family had earned this. But the moment they stepped through the brass-framed entrance into the marble lobby, something shifted. Marcus noticed it immediately. The way conversations seemed to pause, the way eyes tracked their movement across the floor. He'd felt this particular weight before, this heightened visibility that came with being black and predominantly white spaces. He pushed the feeling down. Not today. This is our vacation. At the reception desk, a young woman with severely pulled-back blonde hair looked up from her computer. Her smile, which had been bright for the couple ahead of them, flickered and faded like a bulb losing power. "Welcome to Grandview Resort," she said, her tone suddenly flat. "Do you have a reservation?" "Yes, Williams. Marcus Williams. Presidential suite, checking in for 7 nights. He slid his credit card across the marble counter, along with his driver's license. The receptionist, her name tag read Jennifer, picked up the license as if it might be contaminated, studying it with narrowed eyes. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with deliberate slowness. "I'm not seeing anything under that name," she said, after an uncomfortably long pause. Marcus felt Diana tense beside him. "That's impossible," he said evenly. "I made the reservation 3 months ago. I have the confirmation email." "Sir, I'm sure you understand we have very strict security protocols." Jennifer's voice had taken on a saccharine quality that made Marcus's jaw tighten. "Can't just what?" Marcus interrupted, his voice still controlled, but harder now. "Honor a confirmed reservation?" Behind them, Marcus sensed other guests slowing down, watching him. His children stood close to Diana, their earlier excitement curdling into confusion. Jennifer picked up a phone. "I'm going to need to speak with my manager about this situation." That word, situation. As if Marcus's family was a problem to be solved, rather than guests to be welcomed. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling to his email confirmation. But as he waited, Watching Jennifer whisper into the phone while darting glances at him, a familiar anger began to burn in his chest, the rage that came from being treated as suspect in spaces he had every right to occupy. The rage he'd learned to swallow and suppress for the sake of moving forward, of not being labeled difficult or aggressive. What Marcus didn't know yet was that this small, ugly encounter in a luxury resort lobby was about to become so much bigger. The humiliation was just beginning, and the resolution would make headlines. The manager who emerged from the back office was a man in his late 50s with silver hair and a navy blazer with the resort's gold crest embroidered on the pocket. His name tag identified him as Richard Hartley, general manager. He approached with the kind of practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I understand there's some confusion about a reservation," Hartley said, positioning himself beside Jennifer and crossing his arms. "No confusion on my end," Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady. "I have a confirmed reservation for the presidential suite. 7 nights, starting today. My confirmation number is—" "Sir," Hartley interrupted, his tone patronizing. "The presidential suite requires a significant deposit. I'm sure you understand. It's one of our most premium offerings at $4,500 per night." The implication hung in the air like poison gas. "You can't afford this." Diana's voice cut through the tension. "My husband already provided his credit card. Perhaps if you actually checked your system." "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice," Hartley said, his expression hardening. "We don't tolerate aggressive behavior." Marcus felt his blood pressure spike. Diana had spoken firmly, but quietly. There was nothing aggressive about her tone except to someone predisposed to see aggression in black assertiveness. "This is ridiculous," Marcus said, pulling up his email confirmation and holding his phone out. "Look, confirmation number GB4521. Reservation made March 15th, payment already processed through your secure system." Hartley glanced at the phone for less than a second. "Anyone can fabricate an email," he said, with a dismissive wave. "We've had issues with fraudulent reservations before." The accusation was crystal clear. Marcus felt Tyler's small hand grip his pant leg. Jasmine had gone very quiet, her phone hanging forgotten in her hand. They understood what was happening, even if they didn't want to believe it. "Are you calling me a fraud?" Marcus's voice dropped dangerously low. "I'm saying we need to verify—" "You didn't verify the white couple that checked in 5 minutes before us." Marcus gestured toward the couple now standing by the elevators with their luggage, watching the confrontation with uncomfortable fascination. "You didn't examine their identification like evidence at a crime scene. You didn't question whether they could afford their room." A flush crept up Hartland's neck. "Sir, if you continue with this attitude, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." "We haven't even been allowed on the premises. That's the whole point." By now a crowd had gathered, other guests filming on their phones, staff members watching from behind pillars and doorways. The moment had become a spectacle, which was exactly what Hartley wanted, to pressure Marcus into leaving quietly to avoid further embarrassment. Jennifer whispered something to Hartley. He nodded, then turned back to Marcus with barely concealed satisfaction. "I've confirmed that the presidential suite was booked this morning by one of our platinum members, a Mr. Jeffrey Ashton. He's a long-time guest, very well known to us. So, you see, there must be some mistake with your supposed reservation." Marcus felt the floor shift beneath him. "Booked this morning? That's impossible. I've had this reservation for 3 months. Perhaps you were confused about the dates, or perhaps this was a reservation at a different property. These things happen." The gaslighting was textbook. Make the victim doubt their own reality, their own memory, their own documentation. "I am not confused," Marcus said, articulating each word. "I am not at the wrong hotel. What I am is being discriminated against." The word hung in the air like an alarm. Diana's face hardened into something ugly. "That's a very serious accusation, one I don't take lightly. This has nothing to do with—" He paused, looked at Marcus's family, and chose his words carefully.
with anything other than protecting our establishment from fraudulent activity. "Daddy," Tyler's small voice broke through, "can we please just go?" Marcus looked down at his son's face, saw the confusion and hurt there, and felt something inside him crack. This wasn't just about him anymore. His children were learning a brutal lesson about how the world saw them, how it would always see them, regardless of their father's success or their own accomplishments. Diana's hand found his arm. Her eyes said, "Pick your battles. Protect the kids." But before Marcus could respond, a security officer approached, a large man with a crew cut and a hand resting casually on his belt near his taser. "Mr. Hartley, do we have a problem here?" the officer asked, his eyes fixed on Marcus. "Just some folks who need to be escorted off the property. They don't have a legitimate reservation." "I want to speak to the owner," Marcus demanded, his voice rising despite his efforts at control. "This is discrimination, and I will not—" "Sir, you need to leave now," the security officer stepped closer, "or I'll have to remove you forcibly. We can do this the easy way or the hard way." The threat was clear, and Marcus knew, with the bitter knowledge that comes from being black in America, that if he resisted, if he pushed back, the situation could escalate in ways that might endanger his family. How many videos had he seen of black men being violently removed from spaces they had every right to be in? How many times had "I was just trying to check into my hotel room" ended with handcuffs or worse? "This isn't over," Marcus said quietly, his voice shaking with barely suppressed rage. "Yes, it is," Hartley replied with a thin smile. "Have a nice day. Perhaps you'll find accommodations more suited to your budget elsewhere." The dismissal was complete, the humiliation total. As Marcus shepherded his family toward the exit, he was aware of every phone camera tracking their departure, of every whisper and stare. Diana's face was wet with tears she was trying to hide. Hartley's jaw was clenched so tight Marcus worried she might crack a tooth. Tyler kept looking back, as if someone would call them back, to say there had been a mistake, to make it right. But no one did. They walked through those gleaming brass doors, not as welcome guests, but as ejected suspects. The California sunshine felt like mockery, the sound of waves in the distance like laughter. As Marcus opened the car door for his family, Diana turned to him with tears streaming down her face. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do we still have to go through this? What year is this? What century?" Marcus had no answer. He had money, success, education, respectability, all the things that were supposed to be shields against this kind of treatment, and they had protected him from nothing. Tyler climbed into the back seat and said in a small voice, "Daddy, is it because we're black?" The question shattered something in Marcus. Because yes, it was because they were black. That was the only reason. Their skin color had been enough to transform a confirmed reservation into a mistake, to turn a family vacation into a criminal investigation, to make them unwelcome in a space their money was more than green enough to afford. Marcus started the car with shaking hands. But as he pulled away from the Grandview Resort, as he watched it shrink in his rearview mirror, he wasn't thinking about finding another hotel. He wasn't thinking about letting this go and moving on. He was thinking about who owned the Grandview Resort and whether it was for sale. Because Marcus Williams wasn't just a CEO. He was a man with resources, connections, and, most important right now, the kind of righteous anger that demanded not just justice, but transformation. The Grandview Resort had made a critical error. They hadn't just humiliated a black family. They'd humiliated the wrong black family.
The drive to the hotel, down the road, a modest but welcoming property that accepted Marcus's reservation without a single questioning glance, was silent, except for Tyler's occasional sniffles. Marcus checked his family into their rooms, ordered room service for dinner, and kissed his children goodnight, with promises that tomorrow would be better. Then he opened his laptop. Marcus Williams hadn't built a multi-million-dollar company by accepting defeat. He'd built it by identifying problems and implementing solutions. And right now, the Grandview Resort was a problem that needed solving. Within an hour, he'd identified the ownership structure. Grandview Resort was owned by Coastal Properties, LLC, a company owned by an aging real estate mogul named Bernard Whitmore, who was systematically liquidating his holdings to fund his retirement. The resort, Marcus discovered, had been quietly on the market for 6 months, struggling to find a buyer at its $47 million asking price. Marcus picked up his phone and called his attorney, David Chen, who'd been with him since the early days of Williams Tech Solutions. "I need you to make an offer on a property," Marcus said without preamble. "The Grandview Resort in San Clemente. $47 million asking price. Offer $42 million cash, close in 30 days. "Marcus, it's 11 p.m. and wait, did you say $42 million for a resort?" "Yes." "Can we talk about this in the morning when—" "David," Marcus's voice was steel. "I need this done tonight. Set up a shell company. Don't use my name anywhere in the paperwork. Can you do this?" There was a pause. David Chen had learned over the years that when Marcus used that particular tone, there was a story he'd hear eventually and a very good reason for what seemed like madness. "I'll make the calls," David said simply. "Give me 2 hours." Those 2 hours felt like 2 days. Marcus sat on the hotel balcony, listening to the ocean, replaying every moment of the afternoon's humiliation. He thought about the look on Jasmine's face, the question in Tyler's voice, the tears Diana had tried to hide. He thought about how many other black families had likely faced the same treatment at the Grandview Resort. How many simply drove away, swallowing their anger because they lacked the means to do anything else. How many children had learned that lesson Tyler learned today, that their skin color made them suspect, unwelcome, less than. At 1:47 a.m., David called back. "The offer is submitted through Orion Holdings, LLC. The seller's broker is very interested. Apparently the property's been sitting and cash offers are rare at this price point. He thinks Whitmore will accept by morning." "Good," Marcus said. "When the sale goes through, I want you to schedule a meeting with me and every member of senior management at the resort. Don't tell them who the new owner is until I'm standing in the room." "Marcus, what happened today?" "You'll see," Marcus said quietly. "You'll see." The next 3 weeks moved like a fever dream. The offer was accepted. Due diligence was completed at lightning speed. Financing was arranged through Marcus's business accounts and a line of credit that made his bank's vice president salivate at the interest revenue. Diana figured out what he was doing by day 3. "You're buying it," she said. "Not a question." "I'm buying it." "That's a lot of money for revenge." "It's not revenge." Marcus looked at his wife, this woman who'd stood beside him through every struggle, every triumph, every moment of their 20 years together. "It's accountability," he said. "It's making sure what happened to our children doesn't happen to anyone else's children." Diana studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. "Burn it down," she said softly. "Burn the whole thing down and build something better." On day 29, Marcus received the call. The sale had closed. The Grandview Resort was officially his. On day 30, Marcus walked back through those brass-framed doors wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. David Chen walked beside him, carrying a folder thick with documentation. Marcus had also brought Diana, Jasmine, and Tyler, his daughter in a beautiful sundress, his son in a button-down shirt. They would witness this. Jennifer was at the reception desk. Her eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed in contempt. "You again," she said. "I thought we made it clear you're not—" "Take me to Richard Hartley's office, now." "I'm sorry, but Mr. Hartley is in a meeting with—" "With his entire senior staff, yes, I'm aware. That's the meeting I called. I'm the new owner of the Grandview Resort, and we have a lot to discuss." The color drained from Jennifer's face like water from a broken glass. You're what? The owner, Marcus repeated, his voice echoing across the marble lobby. Now take me to Hartley, unless you'd like your last act as an employee of this resort to be obstructing the owner. Jennifer's hand trembled as she picked up the phone, and Marcus Williams, with his family standing proud behind him, prepared to walk into that office and change everything. The climax wasn't just about purchasing a resort, it was about purchasing the power to demand a reckoning.
The conference room went silent when Marcus walked in. Richard Hartley sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by department heads and senior managers, people who'd spent years building careers at the Grandview Resort, people who had never questioned the culture they'd cultivated. Hartley's face cycled through confusion, recognition, and finally dread. "What is this?" he demanded, looking at David Chen. "I was told the new owner wanted to meet with you, yes." Marcus took the seat at the head of the table, displacing Hartley without a word. Diana, Jasmine, and Tyler stood against the wall, silent witnesses to history. "I'm Marcus Williams. I'm the new owner of the Grandview Resort, and I believe we've met before." The silence was absolute. Hartley's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. 30 days ago, Marcus continued, his voice conversational but edged with steel, I attempted to check into this hotel with my family. I had a confirmed reservation, I had valid identification, and a credit card with more than enough credit to cover the stay. What I also had was dark skin, and that, apparently, was the real problem. He saw several managers shift uncomfortably. Jennifer stood in the doorway, her face ashen. Mr. Hartley questioned whether I could afford the presidential suite. He implied I was running some kind of fraud. He had me ejected by security in front of my children, my 12-year-old daughter, my 8-year-old son. Marcus's voice hardened. He taught them that in America, in 2025, their money isn't as green as white money, that their reservations aren't as valid, that they are suspects first and guests never. "Mr. Williams, Hartley began, but Marcus cut him off with a raised hand. "I'm not finished. Over the past 3 weeks, I've done extensive research. I've reviewed complaint logs, interviewed former employees, and examined your operational practices. What I found is that what happened to my family wasn't an isolated incident. It was pattern and practice." David opened the folder, sliding documents across the table. 16 formal complaints of racial discrimination in the past 3 years alone. Complaints that were dismissed, buried, or resulted in confidential settlements with NDAs attached. This resort has been operating with systemic bias for years, and senior leadership has enabled it. Hartley's face flushed red. "Those were isolated incidents, misunderstandings." "No," Marcus said flatly. "They were discrimination, and they end today." He stood, addressing the room with the commanding presence that had made him successful in the boardroom. "Effective immediately, Richard Hartley, you're terminated. Jennifer Morrison, you're terminated. Anyone in this room who participated in discriminatory practices or enabled them through silence, your employment is under review, and decisions will be made within 72 hours. The room erupted in protest, in excuses, in desperate explanations. Marcus let them speak for exactly 30 seconds, then raised his voice above the chaos. "This resort will become a model for inclusive hospitality, or it will cease to exist. I'm bringing in a new management team, led by professionals who understand that discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's bad business. We will implement comprehensive anti-bias training. We will diversify our staff at every level. We will create a reporting system where complaints are taken seriously and investigated thoroughly. And we will make this right, not just for my family, but for every family that was turned away, questioned, or made to feel less than at this property." Tyler spoke from the back of the room, his small voice carrying in the stunned silence. "Are you going to say sorry?" All eyes turned to the 8-year-old boy who'd been reduced to tears a month ago by the very people now facing consequences. Hartley looked at Tyler, then at Marcus, then down at the table. When he finally spoke, His voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not the one you should apologize to. My son is. Hartley turned to Tyler, and for the first time, there was genuine shame in his eyes. I'm sorry, he said again. What I did was wrong. Unforgivably wrong. Tyler looked at his father, who nodded. Okay, Tyler said simply, because children, when shown how to take the high road, often travel it more gracefully than adults. 6 months later, the Grandview Resort, rebranded as the Grandview Inclusive Resort and Spa, became one of the most diverse and welcoming properties on the California coast. Staff diversity increased by 300%. Guest complaints about discrimination dropped to 0, and the resort's revenue actually increased as word spread about the transformation. Marcus framed the original news articles about the incident and hung them in his office, not as trophies, but as reminders. Reminders that wealth and success don't shield you from racism. Reminders that silence enables injustice. Reminders that sometimes the best response to being shut out is to buy the door. But more importantly, the incident became a teaching moment. Marcus spoke at hospitality conferences about bias in service industries. He established a scholarship fund for young Black professionals entering hotel management. He used his platform not just to punish, but to transform. Because that's what real change looks like. Not revenge, not merely exposing injustice, but rebuilding systems to ensure they serve everyone equally. Now, the question isn't whether racism still exists. The question is what we're going to do about it. Will we film it and move on? Will we shake our heads and forget by tomorrow? Or will we recognize that every time we witness discrimination and do nothing, we become complicit in the system that enables it? Marcus Williams had the resources to purchase a hotel. Most of us don't, but we all have voices. We all have the ability to stand up when we see injustice. We all have the choice to be part of the problem or part of the solution. What happened at the Grandview Resort shouldn't happen anywhere to anyone. But it does, every day, in hotels, in restaurants, in stores, in neighborhoods, in hospitals, in schools. The question is, what role will you play when you witness it? Share the story. Talk about it. Don't let these conversations fade into the algorithm, because change doesn't happen when we're comfortable. It happens when we're uncomfortable enough to act. Jasmine Williams, now 13, recently wrote an essay for her school that ended with this line: "My dad bought a hotel to prove a point, but the point wasn't about money. It was about dignity. And dignity shouldn't cost $42 million. It should be free." She's right, and until it is, we all have work to do.